What's better than one John?
Here's Johnny.
Nobody really knows. That's why we put two of them together. This is Canzano and Wilner, a.k.a. Jon and Jon.
Jon Wilner is here. Jon Canzano is here. I am here. Wilner, we got a great episode ahead of us. We're going to talk about the Big Ten Conference dipping its toe in Vegas. We're going to talk about the CW and the Pac-12. We're going to talk about Brett Yormark trying to take over new time zones, Cam Ward, whole bunch of other stuff. How you doing, my friend? Good to see you.
I'm good. It was good seeing you in person in Indy.
Yeah. What any fallout from that we need to cover here on this episode? You tell me.
You know, it was one of the things I took away just talking to people there was how skeptical everyone is about the whole conference realignment thing from the standpoint of the Olympic sports. And the general theme is like, this can't really be sustainable, can it? With softball teams schlepping across the country and you know, even baseball and basketball. I think everybody I talked to kind of figures there's a good chance that the football structure might hold in place, but that, like, what are we doing here, right? Even the Big Ten people are with the West Coast school. What are we doing here with these Olympic sports? So that was, I thought, a real interesting view from, you know, the Midwestern end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I also think I'm watching the Olympics and seeing all of these athletes from Stanford and Cal and Oregon State and UCLA that are all out there competing. And, you know, as you have pointed out, like they're competing for the Pac-12 until August 2nd, and now they're competing in other conferences. I'm just kind of wondering what's going to happen 4 years from now, 8 years from now, 12 years from now, as we watch our Olympic development programs get stuck in that football vortex where, you know, maybe we fall off. Maybe we stop winning at the clip that we're winning.
Well, and that's part of the college sports industry's argument to Congress to get some kind of federal legislation to kind of contain the NCAA economic revolution, right? Is, hey, we need some guidelines here to protect the economics so that we can preserve the Olympic sports, because they are our pipeline to Olympic medals. And that's an important thing. The end of that pipeline is super important to the country. And the way things are going at the college level, it's going to be harder and harder for the schools to support all their Olympic sports.
Yeah, I had an athletic director tell me, I was asking about the scholarship limits in football and across other sports. You're talking like, you know, about 700 scholarships maximum that you can add inside your athletic department. And, you know, he was saying that what you're going to see is you're going to see some tiering happen, football at the top of that tier, where schools will go all in with as many football scholarships as they can afford. But then as you start to move down that tier, you're going to run into Olympic sports at the bottom, particularly on the men's side, where they're going to go, hey, you know, men's rowing doesn't make us any money. Golf doesn't make us any money. And you're going to start to see some tiering there where maybe the investment isn't made. And so I'll be curious to see how that impacts the men's Olympic sports in particular, and maybe some of the women's Olympic sports. But the athletic director seemed to think that schools will pick sports where they have had success or donor involvement, and they'll invest in those. And because they generate a reward or they generate revenue. And in the other sports, they're going to turn to donors and go, hey, look, if you want to support rowing, you want us to have a great rowing program, we need you to support those scholarships. And so you're going to hear some of that messaging coming, I think, from athletic departments.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if the conferences provide a framework for what to focus on or not focus on. If you just leave it to the schools, you could have half the schools in your conference focusing on, you know, a certain set of sports, and the other half focusing on the others. And so then you've got this huge disparity in the competitive balance, which isn't helpful either. So there's a lot to be worked out. Certainly once this lawsuit gets finalized, we will see what happens on the Title IX front in terms of the revenue sharing, and that will kind of dictate the future of the Olympic sports.
Let's jump into our first topic. Big Ten Conference announcing that they're going to go west with their men's and women's basketball tournaments. You and I both talked to Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, at Big Ten Conference Media Day, but it looks like they're dipping a toe in Vegas. The women's tournament in 2027 going to T-Mobile Arena, men's tournament in 2028. Your reaction to that?
I was surprised, a little bit surprised, that they didn't announce the football championship game was going to be headed to either Las Vegas or LA, right? Last week at Media Day, Petitti said that they have renewed their deal with Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis for football through the 28th season. I had thought maybe they'd try to get out west, before the end of the decade. So this kind of, I think, replaces that in a way, and it's certainly not as big an event, as big a deal as football. So it gives them, it's almost like a test run, probably. Yeah. They got the women first, see how that goes, make adjustments for the men's tournament, and then you kind of figure, if you're looking at that timeline, what is it, 27 for the women's tournament, 28 for the men's, goes well. Maybe they end up moving football to Vegas in 29 or 30.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the Pac-12 kind of did the same thing, right? I think the football deal, because those football contracts are probably a lot more involved, stayed at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. And then we were all going, hey, the basketball thing's such a smashing success. Why aren't they doing this? So I think that probably has to do with the fact, a little bit of perception. Maybe they, I was told by a couple of Big Ten people that they didn't want the idea that, hey, we took these 4 West Coast schools, now we're going west fully. So this is kind of, as we pointed out, dipping a toe here in the Western frontier. And Vegas makes sense. T-Mobile makes sense. I think, I was thinking about this, Wilner, at being at the final Pac-12 tournament in Vegas. The men's tournament was at T-Mobile. The women's tournament was at MGM Garden Arena. But I was thinking, gosh, these tournaments are so great. The fans are great. It's destination. I think this is a big win for the Big Ten Conference. It's a big win for Vegas as well.
And you have to figure there are a lot of Big Ten alumni either in Vegas or in LA. So it's an easy drive, right? I mean, Indiana basketball fans who live in LA 4 hours and you're there to watch your Hoosiers, right? And Phoenix too. Arizona's got a huge Big Ten alumni population. So it's an hour flight for Phoenix, LA, and the Bay Area for all those alums. I think at least the first year or two, it will be a smashing success.
Let's pivot into, there's a little bit of congruency here, but the Big Ten Conference going to Vegas, Big 12 Commissioner Brent Yormark talking about going west. He made the comment, we're taking an innovative approach to exploring new TV windows. You touched on this in your work, some radical scheduling ideas for the Big 12. What are you talking about? Radical scheduling ideas?
Yeah, well, I went and found my stash of LSD, and then I sat down at the computer and started typing, and lo and behold. So the bottom line is that the Big 12 and the ACC too, and the Mountain West and all the conferences that aren't the Big 10 and the SEC, constantly looking for ways to add revenue. And one way is to play football games in windows that aren't currently being used, that don't have competition. That doesn't, Friday nights, there's competition with the Big 10 now. That I don't know if that's a good one, but I started to think, where could, based on Yormark's comments a couple weeks ago, where could the Big 12 put games where there's not competition and they could get some eyeballs and then hence get more money from Fox or ESPN? So I had 3 ideas. One of them is the Sunday of Labor Day weekend, which I think a lot of folks feel like there should be a lot more college football that day. This year, it's just USC LSU is the only game, right? There's no NFL that Sunday. People want football. I think the Big 12 should play that day. I think the night before Thanksgiving is a huge unexplored window for any conference, right? I mean, folks get off of work at late afternoon, the day before Thanksgiving, and you want football, and there's nothing else on. Why not play a conference game at 8:00 Eastern the night before Thanksgiving? I think you get huge ratings. And I thought that for the Pac-12 in the past, right? So we'll see if the Big Ten, a Big 12 is interested in either of those. And
No, I just like that Yormark is thinking outside the box and he's being aggressive and he's trying to
yeah,
find new ways to bring value. And I was told, even when they added Utah kind of that at the 11th hour on that, fateful day a year ago or whatever it was, where they said, okay, we're inviting Utah, that, he had to go and find money because the deal that they have in their TV contract didn't allow them to add additional schools beyond what they had already taken and then some. So, I think he's trying to find new money here, and I think that's a good approach to take, is try to be creative, try to be outside the box. And I can remember Labor Day a year ago, and I think there was only one game that day. I want to say Florida State or somebody was
it was
playing.
Florida State, LSU, and
Yeah.
also Oregon State played San Jose State.
That's right. Yeah, I covered that game, and there were a lot of people that were into that game, and Oregon State was kind of parading around afterwards going, hey, look at the audience we got.
Yeah.
And they got a nice number on that date because they had no competition. So I think you're right. And I think trying to find some creative ways. And isn't it ironic? Everybody was mad at the Pac-12 for playing late night games and on different days. And here now everybody's saying that's where we got to go find the money.
The Big Ten and the SEC have so many of the prime windows on Saturdays taken up, and especially on the broadcast networks. So they're being creative, just like they're being creative, Big 12, with considering, selling the naming rights to the conference, maybe, the All-State 12 or whatever it might be. The other thing that I'm wondering is on these windows is whether they would play on Sunday night after the NFL games are done. The way I kind of laid it out in the column was the 4:30 Eastern game on Fox. What do they call that? America's Game of the Week, I think. That thing ends at 7:30 Eastern, and then you got your Fox post-game show, and then you go right into a Big 12 game, Utah against Oklahoma State or whatever you're going to have, Baylor against Iowa State. On a Sunday night, and you would certainly have competition from the NBC NFL game. But I wonder if there's enough of an audience for college football that doesn't care about the Sunday night NFL game, but would watch a Big 12 game. And it would be, you'd have the Fox, Fox could promote the Big 12 game during its NFL broadcast and then the studio show, and you roll right into it. I think it'd be interesting, and I don't have any idea if they'll look into it, but that is another option potentially.
If there's enough money there, you tell me. I mean, does the Big 12 have the teams in that Pacific time zone to play that late, or does that open a door for the Washington State, Oregon State fan who is out there going, hey, wait a minute, we've got late windows. We're okay playing a night game. Does that create a further expansion for the Big 12 in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it could be the Washington State and Oregon State take advantage of that with the CW. Maybe the Big 12 looks at it and says, yeah, we need a couple more schools in the Pacific time zone. I don't know how it's going to unfold, but certainly the Big 12 has got two things going for it football-wise. Parity, which means that there's a lot of quality games, and also that it's got, 5 schools in the Mountain and Pacific time zones, and it's got 3 or 4 schools in the Eastern time zone. So they have a lot of flexibility with when they can start games on campus. Nobody wants to start a game on campus at 9:30 or 10 o'clock local time, but you could certainly play on a Sunday night and kick off that game at 7 o'clock in Tucson if you wanted to do something like that.
Wilner, I got a chance this week, pivoting into a little bit of Pac-12 news, to talk with Dennis Miller. He's the president of the CW network. Here's what he had to say. He brought up the idea of, the games. They'll have 11 of these Pac-12 games on the CW. They're going to use them kind of in conjunction with their ACC inventory. And they have a studio show that will be produced by Pac-12 Enterprises. Mike Yam will be the face of that show, former Pac-12 network guy. And it looks like they'll do some extra things. They'll do some interesting things to try to build audience. They're getting in the sports business. Was 1 foot in last year. They're diving in this year. They got LIV golf. They've got NASCAR. They've got ACC football. They're going to layer that with Pac-12 football. Here's what Dennis Miller had to say about kind of the future and the relationship with the Pac-12 Enterprises team.
Well, we're building out the facility to be agnostic, so we can cover ACC, we can cover Pac-12, and obviously, just given their history and the quality of the work here, we're hoping it can lead into to other things.
Leading into other things. You tell me, is this CW Pac-12 marriage? Does it work?
I think it will work as long as Washington State and Oregon State can make a go of it in this structure, whether it's the two of them alone or in the Pac-12, right? To me, the issue is what happens in 2 years. Do they have to join the Mountain West, are they in a conference that doesn't have the CW anymore, right? Fox and CBS have the Mountain West right now. Would they be the network partners for a reconfigured league? So that's the piece I don't know. To me, though, and I thought that was a great interview you did. To me, what stood out is this is what the promise of the Pac-12 network or the infrastructure was supposed to be, right? So that they could produce events for other media companies.
Yeah, and kind of ironic, right? I mean, this Pac-12 Enterprises thing might end up being a really nice revenue stream for Oregon State, Washington State in the short term. Is the CW doesn't have any production, and you hear Dennis Miller there talking about, hey, yeah, we're doing this ACC Pac-12 studio show. They will have look-ins during the game. They'll go back to the studio to kind of promote what else is going on the network with LIV golf and NASCAR. And it looks like they really want to, he called it a flywheel of sports programming. And then beyond that, people asking about the money, I'm being told, it's around $1 million a game that they're getting, but the money doesn't matter. It was the exposure they needed. They were only available in the Pac-12 network in 15 million households nationally. They get 125 million potential with the CW. There will be no streaming element. There's not going to be a live stream of these games, but you can get the CW with rabbit ears or your base cable package or a variety of other streaming services that carry this CW. But the games will also be available the next day, the following day, in their entirety on the CW app and online. So I think there's a lot of exposure potential, but you're darn right. Like Washington State, go out and win 8 games this year. Rattle around the top 25. Have a great start to your season. Oregon State, even, you're in a transition with Trent Bray. But, man, you've got to be bowl eligible. This is not a year to take a step backwards. And I'm a little more worried about Oregon State than I am Washington State, given the returners that Jake Dickert has at Washington State. But this is a year to take a nice, solid step with a new media partner. And I think it fits in a lot of ways, kind of this, it's us against the world. Well, the CW is doing the same thing with broadcasting. This is all new to them. But evident last year, they had some bad games on the bad ACC games that still rated okay with 400,000 or 500,000 people watching them. That needs to be better this year. I think layering these games, having a lead in of a football game into a football game will help. And I think the games will be better. But when they had good games like Florida State was playing, even playing North Alabama, they drew 1.3 million viewers. And the top 5 broadcasts in 2023 on the CW were all ACC football games. They're not dumb. They were looking at that, Wilner, and they were going, give us some more football. And the only thing they could get was the Pac-12, and lucky for the Pac-12.
Yep. Football's where it's at, right? Live sports are where it's at. And within that, it's football. And this gives the Pac-12 Enterprises, which, for those unfamiliar, that is the production end of what used to be the Pac-12 network. It gives the Pac-12 Enterprises, in a way, a chance for proof of performance, right? They do a good job with all the CW stuff, and it makes it easier for them in the winter or spring to try to go get more work on the production end with other media companies and eventually turn it into a real revenue-producing business, which is what Washington State and Oregon State have kind of hoped since last summer, that they could find a way to make this thing profitable.
Yeah, and I asked Dennis Miller, I said, tell me about your distribution, because I heard 95% of U.S. households,
Yeah.
heard 99%. He said it's 100%. They're comfortable saying that. There are a couple of little markets here or there where they're ironing things out, but they expect to have that done by the football season. Where have I heard that before? But
Yeah.
the exposure, people keep asking me, what'd they get money-wise? And I go, well, we'll get that. But also baked into that, there's going to be some production stuff that the Pac-12 Enterprises is doing. And so I'm not concerned about the money for Oregon State and Washington State. They got $250 million in that settlement. I'm concerned, if I'm Oregon State, Washington State, about just having everybody be able to see me. And if I'm good and I'm worth a damn, people are going to watch. And this is a message to those Cougar and Beaver fans. It's no time to turn your TV off. Tune in, watch your team, because the Big 12 is going to be watching that. The ACC is going to be watching that. As Pat Chun said at Big Ten Media Day, the reason why Washington's in the Big Ten was TV ratings. It's what drives realignment. And so Oregon State, Washington State need to post some numbers on the CW.
They do. And September 14th, and I'm sure we'll talk about that as we get closer, but that is a huge date for both those schools, right? Civil War and Apple Cup are both. Yep. Can I say Civil War?
Yeah,
what are we doing?
We're calling it the Civil War. We're calling it the Civil War. It's the Civil War. Everyone calls it the Civil War. I just said Civil War. You said Civil War. That's what it is. By the way, I reached out to a Civil War expert to ask, is that offensive that they call it the Civil War? And he had a strong opinion on it. And he said, say Civil War. He goes, it's silly, direct them my way. So we can do that. Cam Ward. I want to talk about Cam Ward for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Cam Ward was at Washington State last season, jumped in the transfer portal, as people know. Then in the 11th hour in the transfer portal, decided he was going to declare, or say he was about to declare, for the NFL draft. He did not. He ended up at Miami. He got a nice, 7-figure NIL deal. And he's talking about it now, but I want to play a clip. Here's Ward, first of all, when he made that initial announcement. Listen carefully, Wilner, to how he positioned this, because it raised eyebrows. I think we talked about it at the time. He didn't say he was going in the NFL draft or in the NFL draft. He said he was, well, I'll let him speak.
What's up? It's Cam Ward, and I'll be declaring for the 2024 NFL draft.
Short and sweet. I'll be declaring for the NFL draft. He did not really declare. He just said he was going to be declaring. And he subsequently got a better NIL deal from Miami. He went on Shedeur Sanders' podcast this week and revealed what a lot of people suspect.
Then once I got to talking with Florida State, Miami, I told them straight up, I'm going to declare, but I'm looking to come back to school. I'm not signing with no agent. I'm not doing nothing. And at that point, Miami just stayed on me and prayed about it. And at the end of the day, I feel like I put myself in a better position by staying another year.
Staying another year, got the money. Is this the blueprint now for quarterbacks in college?
Good old Mario. I think it's a blueprint. So we don't know that he actually ever filed the paperwork then, do we?
I don't think he did. I don't think I said I'm going to be declaring.
Yeah.
He isn't really declaring, and Miami wanted him. Florida State wanted him. But I think it was he created some leverage, and good on him, I guess.
For quarterbacks, especially a few other positions, there's a lot of leverage right now between the NFL draft on one end, NIL on the other. They're going to soon have revenue sharing. It is good to be a high-level talent in football or men's basketball. It has never been better. He's an example. I'm sure there's other kids going to be doing that, leveraging draft with NIL, because you always need quarterbacks, right? It's great to be a really elite athlete in the revenue producers right now. And that's part of the NCAA's whole problem, right? They're not going to get this chaos contained until they can collectively bargain, right? They need the players to unionize so there could be collective bargaining so that they can provide a permanent legal framework for everything. But why would Cam Ward unionize now? He's going to have the revenue sharing from the schools as part of this settlement, plus NIL. right? Plus he's got a scholarship. It's great. They're in a great situation. So the NCAA has screwed up so badly that it has put the athletes in a position where they have no need to unionize to help the NCAA clean up its own mess.
It's a great point. And you also have star players going, hey, I can do better negotiating on my own, as he did and others have. And, the only question will be how strong or how much footing can those unions get. As we know, the NBA Players Association, NFL's Players Association, Major League Baseball Players Association, very effective in collectively bargaining. But
Yeah.
do they
We also
need
don't
to?
know,
Yeah.
what are these NIL deals, right? There's a lot of smoke
Yeah.
with some of these deals, right? I mean, I typically figure that whatever has been floated is being floated by either the NIL operators to make their specific collective look good for potential prospects to come to those schools, or it's being floated by agents to make themselves look good.
Yeah.
It's, you have to be very wary of believing all the numbers, but certainly a guy like Cam Ward is going to be getting, low seven figures probably from Miami's collective, because you need proven quarterbacks.
And think about what he did. He leaves Incarnate Word for Washington State. The Cougar Collective gave him a package worth $90,000. It included a truck, an apartment, some spending cash. His parents got to fly out for games. He jumped from 90,000 to seven figures after, a decent year at Washington State. And so Damian Martinez leaves Oregon State. He was getting, 400,000, and that turns into seven figures as well. I mean, they're, and you're right about the smoke out there. And I did this thing where I interviewed a bunch of athletic directors about how the job has changed. And that was one of the biggest things that came up. Division I ADs were saying they're spending a lot of their time running around trying to find out, are these NIL deals real? Calling other schools, trying to compare notes the best they can. I think there should be some transparency on these deals. What are you getting? What does it involve? When are you paid? Some of the schools, don't pay in a lump sum. They want to pay quarterly because they don't trust that the athletes are going to, stick to their retention agreement. So there's a lot involved, but, the prevailing thought was they call after they're told by an agent, hey, this player is being offered $500,000 or $750,000 to transfer. They will call and they can't find anybody to confirm those figures because they don't exist. They're not real.
Yep. It's chaos. Total chaos. And bottom line is, the more passionate success in the NIL world, which includes both high school and transfers, success is based on the passion and pockets of your donors. That is what it is all about these days, right? It costs to put together a top level football roster. You got to have at least $15 million, $20 million from your donors to use to buy your players. And I'm saying buy your players in a perfectly legal sense.
Right.
And that gets back to, how's this all going to work?
How sustainable is it? Is it sustainable? It doesn't feel sustainable.
It doesn't. You'd think there'd be a little bit of a market correction, especially once we get into the House lawsuit situation, once that takes effect, probably next fall, with the revenue sharing. And now you get the additional roster sizes, right? So football, they're going to approve that currently football team can have, let's just take Oregon State, okay? Beavers can have 85 guys on scholarship and then unlimited number of walk-ons, right? So they got 25, 30, 40 walk-ons. The new rule starting next fall, 105. All of them can be on scholarship, but you can't have more than 105. You could put 85 on scholarship and 20 walk-ons. You could put 105 on scholarship and no walk-ons, but that is it. The max is 105. And it's like that going to be like that for every sport, right? Baseball's adding 20 roster spots. Schools are going to have, like you said before, schools are going to have to decide, where are we going to put our money? And that money's going into football. And at most places it's going into men's basketball. But then after that, Where's it going? It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and I fear for the Olympic sports as we're watching these Olympics, and I also think, like Oregon State's got a great baseball program. Do they go all in on baseball? And if so, what suffers? Because, athletic directors are not going to want to cut sports. They're just going to stop funding them at the level that they once funded them, and that includes scholarships.
Yep. The other interesting piece too is Gonzaga.
Yeah.
How are the basketball, the non-football schools going to fare in this new world? Gonzaga and the Big East schools in particular, right? They don't have to worry about spending $15 million a year revenue sharing on football players. Whatever they can afford, they can plow into men's basketball. It's going to be interesting to see if the basketball schools kind of gain ground competitively against the football schools in the new era because of how they can allocate their funds.
Yeah. Well, we've got a great episode next week. We're going to get an interview with Teresa Gold, the Pac-12 Conference Commissioner. Make sure you subscribe, hit that subscribe button, share this podcast with your friends, and we're back next week with an all-new episode of Canzano and Wilner, the podcast.
Thanks, everyone.